Hello and welcome to the Algebra 1 Test 5 Study Guide. My name is Mr. Sipple and I'm here to walk you through 10 problems that will be exactly like the problems that are on the test that you're here to redo. Really appreciate you being here. It means a lot that you have decided to do something about your grade and raise your grade, and that's what this tutoring program is all about. It's not about to punish you. You didn't do anything wrong. We're just here to help you. Just here to help you redo a test so that you can raise your grade. Before we get started, let's just make sure we know who you are and we get your paper going to the right place. So top right corner, if you'll see name, if you'll just go ahead and write your name. And because some of you are coming from different teachers, I just need to know who your teacher is. So for period, if you'll write your teacher's name. So that way I can get your work to your teacher. Alright, now the format of the way that this is going to work is you'll notice there's 3 columns that go across the page, and each problem that goes across the page is really the same exact problem, just slightly different numbers. So what I'll do is I'll do the first problem to kind of show you how to do it and remind you how to do it, and then I'll tell you, hey, alright, now you try one in the middle, now you try one on the right side, and the idea is that you practice a couple problems like what you've just seen. Now what you want to try to do is you want to try to use the video to the least amount possible, and what I mean by that is that if you know how to do a problem, don't listen to me explain out the problem and then just copy down what I write, because that's it's not doing you any good. So what you want to be able to do, definitely watch the first one, right, the one that's on the left side, so that I can show you how to do it. But then at that point, try number 1 in the middle and try number 1 on the right side, and for the rest of the problems, try those on your own, right? Because I think that would be of the most benefit for you, is to try to do as much of this as possible on your own. And then what you can do is that if you get stuck on something, you can watch the video, pause, and then kind of try to work it from there for yourself. And mentioning pausing, the idea with the video here is that you're able to rewind if you need to hear something again or see something again. Pause it if you want to kind of work on your own for a little bit and then come back to the video. Or if you already know an answer and you got it right and you don't need to hear the explanation, go ahead and fast forward. It's not going to hurt my feelings. In fact, that's what I'd like you to do if you already know how to do something. Alright, well, let's go ahead and jump into it and take a look at the first problem. Okay, so this first problem says write the equation that describes the line with a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of 5 in slope-intercept form. Well, being that this is the first problem, maybe we should just back it up a little bit and talk about some of the background information here. First of all, the formula that you see in the top right corner, that's what we call slope-intercept form. And when we graph a line, when it says that there's a y-intercept of 5, what that y-intercept of 5 means, I'll go ahead and highlight that, y-intercept of 5, what that means is that it's where the line crosses the y-axis. So you see the letter there, and I've just got a little graph over here on the side. See the letter y, so this is the y-axis. So if it has a y-intercept of 5, it's just telling you that it crosses the y-axis at 5. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if it says that it has a slope of 1/2, a slope just means from that point how many it goes up or down, and then how many to the right. So for instance, this particular line, it says it has a slope of 1/2. So what that would look like is that it would go up 1, up because it's positive, and then 2 to the right. And we always, 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 always go to the right. Just like you read a book left to right, we work with math left to right as well. Okay. Alright, and then so what you'll have is, you know, some line that looks like that. And now what this question is actually not asking us to graph it. I show you the graph because I just want you to get a visual of what we're doing. But what this particular question is asking is just what would this equation in slope-intercept form be? Well, it's real simple. Here's slope-intercept form. Let me drag this over here. Slope-intercept form says y equals, so I'm just going to write this down. I'm going to write y equals, and then it says m, which is the slope. Oh, well, it tells me the slope is 1/2. Watch how easy this is. X, so I'm going to write x, plus b. And then what it says that what I have for my b is that it says that my b is the y-intercept. Well, it tells me the y-intercept is 5. So all that means is I've just got to plug in 5. So what is the equation of a line that has a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of 5? Well, it's y equals 1/2 x plus 5. So really all I did is I just plugged it in. I took those two numbers. I just had to know where to put which number, to put the 1/2 in the middle and then the 5 at the end. Okay. So probably easiest question on this entire test, because you're really not having to do any work at all on this. All right, so go ahead and pause the video now. You try number 1 in the middle, and then hit play again, and then we'll go ahead and check the answer on that one. Okay, so should have number 1 in the middle complete. Let's take a look at this one. And again, I'm just going to use my highlighter here so I can make sure I spot what's important. The slope is a -3/4, and then they tell me that the y-intercept is a -2. Well, again, all I'm doing is I'm just taking slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. By the way, this little diagram right here that I'm swirling around, if you haven't copied that down, go ahead and copy that down at the top left-hand corner of your page. Y equals mx plus b. The m is what we call the slope, and the y-intercept is that last number, the b. So if you need to pause it right now to write that down, go ahead and do that. But you want to make sure that you have that there, because we're going to refer back to it throughout the video. All right, so it says that, well, again, I'm just copying it. It says that y equals the slope, which is a -3/4, x, all right, I'm just going to copy x, plus b, and the y-intercept, which is a -2. Now, there's two ways I could write this. You notice that I said plus a -2, or you know what the other thing I could do is, instead of saying plus a -2, let me get up my eraser here, is I could just write -2 rather. I could write it that way too. Same difference, right? And then so that's what my answer would be. Y equals -3/4 x minus 2. If you need just a quick refresher on graphing, again, the last number is the y-intercept. It's where we begin. So this says begin at a -2. And then the slope is a -3/4. So it says to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and write 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we would have a line that looks something like that. Again, for this particular test, you do not need to graph, but I think it's nice to have a visual of what we're working with, and also probably a good refresher for you as well. All right, so go ahead and pause the video now and try number 1 on the right side. All right, so should have number 1 on the right side complete. So let's go ahead and check to see what you got there. Again, I'm going to do a little highlighting here, just so I make sure I know what I'm doing. Slope equals 6, and y-intercept equals -9. All right, let me pull over slope-intercept form here for me, and y equals the slope, which is 6, x plus b. You know, basically what this problem is they're just making sure you know how to set this thing up. Like, they're just making sure that you know, where does the slope go, where does the y-intercept go. So it's really just kind of testing on, how to set this thing up. So we'd get y equals 6x minus 9. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the second problem. And it says, write the equation that describes the line in slope-intercept form. Okay, well, we already know it's slope-intercept form. It's this right here. That has a slope of -4. Okay, so they tell me my slope, which is kind of like the last one. But then what they don't do is they don't tell me what the y-intercept is. They tell me a point. They say that it goes through, this point -2, 4. But they don't tell me exactly what the y-intercept is. So just to get a visual on that one, what it says is that it goes through some point, -2, 4. So that would be left 2, up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it has a slope of -4 from there. So that meaning that it would go down 4, 1, let me get my slope, that it would go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. Down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. Now, just by graphing it, I'm thinking the y-intercept is -1, -2, -3, -4. That's what I'm thinking, because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like where that line, wow, that was not even close. Well, it was close, but you get the idea. Right, so it looks like the, actually, you know what? That's too bad. I can't do that. I got to do a little better than that. Let me get a little straight edge here. And, oh, there we go, a little straighter. So what that looks like is that it looks like it goes through -4 on the y-axis. Now, again, we're not graphing here. I show you the graph because I want you to have the visual of what's happening here. But again, we're going to try to figure this out without having to graph. Because see, I have graph paper, so it's easy for me to tell you, oh yeah, it goes through -4. Well, because I have graph paper. You maybe don't. So we need another way to figure out what this would be. So we know that y equals the slope. Now they do tell us that. They tell us the slope is -4. But what they don't tell us is they don't tell us what the b is, right? They don't tell us what the y-intercept is. So we're going to have to solve for what that is. Okay? Now we're thinking it's -4, but we need to verify that. So what we can do is to solve this algebraically, right? Because this would be solving it graphically, what I've done over here on the right side. That's solving it graphically, meaning I drew the picture just to see where it crossed. But we want to solve it algebraically, which means that we want to solve it without having to graph. Because maybe we don't have graph paper. Maybe we don't want to graph, right? So let's take a look at what we do know. What they do tell us is they tell us that there is an x of -2, and there's a y of 4. So they do tell me an x and a y. So what I can do is I can take those and fill that into slope-intercept form. So I've got a y, and again, let me write y equals mx plus b here. So what I've got there is that I've got y. Oops, we did not want to move that. So we've got a y of 4. What I'm doing, I'm basically just plugging in what I know, the 3 things I know, to find the one thing I don't know. They're telling me that y is 4. They're telling me that the m, the slope, is -4. They're telling me that x is a -2. And then what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the b. So I'm taking the things that I do know to find the one thing I don't know, which is the y-intercept. All right, so let me solve this one for b. So -4 times -2. That would be a +8. I want to get b by itself because that's what I'm looking for, so I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Those cancel, and I'm just going to flip it around here. So b would be equal to a -4. Right? The reason why it's a -4, right, is because I have more negatives. So now it's no longer a mystery. I can erase my little question mark. I know what b is equal to. It's equal to a -4. Which, by the way, that matches up. I told you that it was going to be a -4, or at least I thought it was, right? And that's what it ended up being. It ended up being a -4. So y equals -4x minus 4. And for this one, be careful, by the way. You notice that a and b look really similar. Well, b has a slope of a +4. So the one that we're looking for would be a. So our correct answer there would be a. All right, so go ahead and pause now and try number 2 in the middle. All right, so should have number 2 in the middle complete. Number 2 in the middle, by the way, is the correct answer there is a, y equals 3x plus 2. So here's what you can do. If you got that as a correct answer, go ahead and fast forward to number 2 on the right and check your answer there. If you did not get a as an answer, then why don't you hang on and we'll go through the explanation of why a is the answer. Okay. And by the way, we'll do this for each one of the problems from here on out, is that I'll show you what the answer is first before I work it out, because I want to give you the opportunity that if you already know what the answer is, you know how to do it, well, go ahead and fast forward. Go to the next problem, right? Or the one that's on the right side. So, and then we can go to the next problem. So if you don't need the explanation, then you don't need the explanation. You can move on. But if you got it wrong, then why don't you hang on? We'll work through this one together. I'll show you how to do it. And if you catch yourself, if you figure out what your mistake is, don't watch me solve the rest of it. You pause it and you see if you can solve the rest of it, right? Because what's going to be most beneficial here for you is that if you're trying to do as much of this as possible on your own, because if you're just mindlessly copying what I'm doing, it's not going to do you any good. All right, so let's work through this one. So we've got slope-intercept form. Same thing, right? You notice I keep pulling down the same thing because, well, that's what we're working with. We're working with the same thing. So it says y equals, and let's check out what the slope is. So they give us a slope. Looks like it says the slope is +3. So I know what the slope is. It's +3. 2x plus, what I don't know is I just don't know what the y-intercept is, right? Because they didn't tell me what the y-intercept is. They tell me it goes through some point. They tell me it goes through -2, -4, but they don't tell me anything else other than that, right? By the way, just so I can get a visual on it, I'm going to go over there and graph it just to see if I can get an idea of what it might look like. -2 means go left 2, -4 means down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It says it has a slope of 3. So slope means, again, how to move from there. If it's a positive, that means you're going to go up. So we're going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then over 1. The reason why it's over 1, by the way, is that if you were going to write slope, if you're going to write that right there, you can make 3 a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. So that's why the up 1. And then if you wanted to, if we wanted to continue that pattern, up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, then that looks like it crosses. Let's see, where's that? Looks like it crosses right there at +2. So I'm thinking that the y-intercept is going to be a +2. Oh yeah, I already know that, right? Because the answer is A. But let me just prove that algebraically. So what I do know is I know that, so I'm going to kind of rewrite this. So I've got y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to plug in what I know. So I know that they give me an x of -2. They give me a y of -4. So let's plug that in. -4 equals m, which is 3, times x, which is -2, and then plus b. And again, I'm color coding that for you so that you see which number matches up with which. So -4 equals -6 plus b. Add 6 to both sides, right? Because the opposite of a -6 would be a +6, because we're trying to get b by itself. And we get b is equal to 2. Oh, okay. Well, b equals 2. That matches up what we thought it would be. So it is no longer a mystery. We now know that the y-intercept would be a +2. So y equals 3x plus 2. All right, so go ahead and pause now. If you hadn't already done so, do number 2 on the right side, and then we'll be back in a second to check the answer. All right, so let's see what you got for number 2 on the right side. Should have got D, y equals 2x plus 4. So again, if you got D as an answer, go ahead and fast forward to number 3. If you did not get D as an answer, then hang on and let's take a look at the explanation on this one. All right, slope-intercept form. So we're still starting in the same place. Got y equals m, which again, m is the slope. Right? That's just the letter we use for slope. So the slope, it says, is 2. And then it says that it goes through the point -1, 2. Well, again, I'm going to start off by graphing this. So let me go to -1, 2. So -1, 2 just means go left 1, up 2. Right, so that's that point. And then it says there's a slope of 2. So a slope of 2 would mean up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And let's see where that looks like it crosses. Well, it looks like it crosses right there. And that looks like it's at 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm thinking that the y-intercept is 4. I don't know. Let's prove it, though. Slope of 2. So I know I've got y equals 2x. Plus, and then the b, again, they don't tell me what the y-intercept is. So that's what I'm looking for. Again, I think it's 4. And that answer right there is highlighted as 4. So it's pretty strong evidence that it is, but let's prove it. So y equals mx plus b. And again, what I'm doing is I'm just taking what I know to find out what I don't know. I know that x is equal to -1. I know that y is equal to +2. So I've got 2 equals m, which is 2, times x, which is -1, and then plus b. And we're just going to solve this real simple equation for b. 2 times -1 would give you a -2. You want to get b by itself, so we got to get rid of that -2. The opposite of a -2 would be a +2. What we do to one side, we do to the other. That's our golden rule of algebra. And so we get b is equal to 4. I just flipped it around there, right? So b is equal to 4. So we now know what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is 4. So we get y equals 2x plus 4. Okay. All right, so let's move on to number 3. Now, number 3, so there's a progression here, by the way. I haven't mentioned that. Maybe kind of go back to this real quick. In the first problem, what they did is that, if you look back to the first one, the first problem, they just flat out told you, hey, the slope is this, the y-intercept is that. We didn't have to do any work. We just took the two numbers that they gave us, we plugged it in. Now, if you look at what happened on number 2, they gave you the slope, but what they did not give you is they did not give you the y-intercept. So we got the slope for free, meaning we didn't have to work for it, but the y-intercept, we did have to work for that by solving it here. So now, if you look at the progression, how this is building, number 3 says, write an equation that passes through the line 8, 6, 2, 9. So what you notice is they don't mention anything about slope. They don't mention anything about y-intercept. What that means is that we don't get either one of those for free. That means that we actually have to solve for the slope and solve for the y-intercept. So we actually got to do a little bit more work on this one. So our formula, what we're working with, is the same. Y equals mx plus b. Just the difference here on this one is that we don't know what the slope is because they don't tell us. And we don't know what the y-intercept is because they didn't tell us that either. So we actually have to work for both of those. Well, in that last problem, we showed how you solve for b. You just take the slope, the x, and the y and plug it in. But then it's like, well, hey, how do I do that if I don't even know what the slope is? Well, that's okay. We have a formula that'll do that for us. Now, before we actually use that particular formula, again, I just want you to see maybe somewhat of a visual on this one. And this particular one, actually, the numbers are a little outside my graph because my graph only goes up to 6, but we can kind of use our imagination here a little bit. So this says 8, 6. So let's go out a little further here. Let's pretend that's 8, 6. And then it says 2, 9. So that would be right 2, up 9. So let's say that's 7, 8, 9, something like that. So what it's saying is they're saying it's some line that goes through these 2 points. That it goes through the point 8, 6, which is that point right there, and it goes through the point 2, 9. And so, we're saying that we've got some line that looks like that. Now, by the way, my y-intercept is way up here. If this is 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, and actually, I'm not that far off because you look at the multiple choice over here, you see that the y-intercepts are 10s. So it looks like I'm probably on the right track. Now, again, though, this is looking at it graphically. We want to solve it algebraically. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out what the slope is going to be. So there's actually a formula for slope. And what it says is that if you look at the change in y over the change in x, that'll tell you how the line is changing. So you notice this notation of x1, y1, x2, y2. All that's referring to is that if you looked at this and you said, okay, 8, that's an x, and it's the first of 2 x's, so I'll call that x1. And 6 is a y, and it's the first y, so I'll call that y1. And then if you look at 2, that's an x, and it's the second x, so I'll call that x2. And then if you look at 9, that is another x. I'm sorry, it's a y, and it's the second y, so we can call that one y2. So let's say that one is y2. So what I want to do is I'm just going to put these numbers, I'm just going to plug them into the formula here, or the equation. y2, which we said y2 is 9, so I would have 9 minus y1, which is 6, over x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is 8. And again, I got it kind of color-coded there for you so you can keep track of everything. All right, 9 minus 6, well, that would be 3. And then 2 minus 8 would be a negative 6. So if we wanted to reduce this fraction down, we'd actually get a negative 1/2. Okay? So we've got a slope of negative 1/2. That's what my slope would be. So it's no longer a mystery. I know now that the slope would be a negative 1/2. And all I got to look for now is I just got to look for what the y-intercept would be. How do I find the y-intercept? Well, actually by using the same method that we just used on the last problem of plugging in the x and the y to solve for that. Just move my graph out of the way a little bit. So let's take y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b. And then you're like, all right, well, which y do I use? Do I use 9, because that's a y, or do I use 6? That's also a y. Well, it actually doesn't matter which one you use, so you just pick one of them, right? So let's say, for instance, I don't know, I'll just go with the first one. Again, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. So that would be 6. Actually, let me color code that. We're doing purple for my y. So that would be 6 equals m. Well, we just figured out what that is. It's a negative 1/2. So negative 1/2. X, well, the x I'm using, by the way, if I picked this first pair, then I got to stick with it. I can't mix and match. So that the x on for that one would be 8, and then plus b. So plus b. All right, so we just need to solve this one for b. By the way, I actually already know, if I know that the slope is a negative 1/2, you look at the multiple choice, that says a slope of negative 2. I know that's not correct, so I can cross off C. B says a positive 1/2. I know that's not correct. And then if I look at A and D, A has the one that has a slope of 10, which if you looked back over at our graph, we already kind of predicted that that's what it would be. So I'm thinking the answer is probably A. And that's an example of sometimes where you can just do sometimes you almost kind of do half the problem. If you get stuck, the half that you did might actually still be enough for you to get the right answer. So that's why it's important to try as best as you can on it. All right, so you got 6 equals. Now don't get freaked out by the fraction. All this is saying is that it's saying negative 1/2 times 8. And then, so the deal with fractions is if one's a fraction, make the other fraction, so that would be 8 over 1. And then how you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So this would be 6 equals, multiply across, so negative 1 times 8 would be a negative 8. So you'd have a negative 8. And then on the bottom, 2 times 1 would be 2. And then plus b. And I'm going to have to scroll down here just a little bit. So negative 8 divided by 2, oh, that divides evenly. That's just negative 4. And then add 4 to both sides. And you get that b is equal to 10. Okay, so the fraction wasn't that bad. So now that we know that the b is equal to 10, that's our y-intercept is equal to 10. So we can say, yep, that would be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 10. So that was definitely, we kind of worked up to that one. Yeah, there's definitely a little more work on that one. But, this is about as bad as it gets. And probably actually for this whole test, this particular problem is actually where we're probably going to have to do the most work. So think of it kind of being as downhill from here. All right, well, so go ahead and pause now and try to do number, wow, what number round is this, 3? Yep, number 3. So try to do number 3 in the middle, and we'll be back in a second to check that. All right, so let's see what you were able to do with number 3 in the middle. Correct answer you should have got was A, y equals negative 1x plus 10, which, oddly enough, was the answer to the last one, wasn't it? Was that? It was the same answer. That's weird. Well, that wasn't intentional. Who knows? But yeah, so that should have been the answer you got. If that is the answer you got, go ahead and fast forward to number 3 on the right side and see what you got there. If you didn't get that as an answer, then let's go through it together and figure out maybe where you went wrong. And again, if you figure out where you went wrong, pause the video at that point so that you can, figure it out and try to do the rest of it on your own. So again, you really want to try to do as much of this as possible on your own. All right, so let's see here. Y equals Same deal. We don't know what the slope is. We don't know what the y-intercept is. So that's what we're looking for. And let's see, what do we know? Well, we know that it goes through, so there's some point here that it goes through 8, 6, which that's my first x, and that it goes through 6, that's my first y, and then it goes through 6 on the x, and that's my second one, and then it goes through 7 on the y, which is my second one. So it goes through those points right there, which, you know, if I wanted to try to graph that, 8, 6, again, that goes a little off my graph. And then 6, 7, which would be 6, 7, something like that. And then I've got a graph like that. Well, this one's actually not as helpful because kind of ran out of room over there. So it's going to be kind of hard for me to tell exactly where it crosses. Now, I can use my imagination. If the answer I know is a positive 10, if you imagine that that kept going, then that would make sense that it crosses at 10. But let's prove it. So we have to first figure out what the slope is. So I'm going to say y2, which is 7, minus y1, which is 6, and that's over x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is 8. And again, I've got that color-coded for you so that you can keep track of which number goes where. 7 minus 6 would be 1. 6 minus 8, you have more negatives, so that would be a negative 2. So we get a slope of a negative 1/2. So the first part of the mystery is solved. We know that the slope is a negative 1/2. Which, by the way, if you look over at the multiple choice, I can eliminate C right away, because that says the slope is a negative 2. D says a slope of a positive 1/2, so I can eliminate that. And again, these are strategies you can use on a multiple choice test. Now, so I got to figure out what my B is. So that's where I've got to figure out y equals mx plus b. And again, it doesn't matter, and I don't know if I made this point clear enough in the last one, it doesn't matter which x and y you pick. Once you pick a pair, you got to stick with that pair. You can't mix and match. Meaning you can't say, oh, I'm going to take this x and I'm going to use that y. No, you gotta stick with whatever pair that you're working with. I don't know. We picked the first pair last time. I'm going to go with the second pair. Who knows? Again, it doesn't matter. So 7 equals m, which the slope, which we just figured out, is a negative 1/2, times x, which the x of that pair that I'm using is 6. So that would be times 6. And by the way, one step that I could go ahead and make, that I didn't make in this last one, is that if I know that that's a fraction, negative 1/2, then I can go ahead and make my slope a fraction, or I'm sorry, my x a fraction as well. So instead of just saying 6, I can kind of combine a step here, and I can just go ahead and say 6 over 1. I can just go ahead and do that. And then plus b, which is what we're looking for. So I've got 7 equals, multiply across the top, so that would be a negative 6. Multiply across the bottom, which would be 2. By the way, you can also cross-cancel. So you could say 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that's another way of multiplying fractions, is you can cross-cancel. So if you know how to do that, then you can do that as well. Negative 6 divided by 2, which is a negative 3. And then let's add 3 to both sides, because we're trying to get b by itself. So it looks like we're going to get b is equal to 10. So mystery solved there. So my y-intercept would be 10. And we'll put a box around it. So y equals negative 1/2 x plus 10. All right, so go ahead and pause the video now and try number 3 on the right side, and we'll check it here in a second. Alrighty, well, let's take a look at number 3 on the right side. Number 3 on the right side, you should have got C, y equals 1/3 x plus 6. If you did get that as a correct answer, go ahead and meet me up at problem number 4. If you didn't get that as an answer, then let's go through it together. Alright, slope-intercept form, same drill. That's what I'm looking for. So I know that they don't tell me the slope. They don't Tell me the y-intercept. Not sure why I'm writing 1/2. I guess we got used to that being the slope. I don't know what the slope is. It's a mystery. Plus, I don't know what the y-intercept is. But what I can do is I can take my formula here for slope and figure it out. So let me drag that over here. And again, I'm just going to start off by labeling. That's an x, and it's my first x, so I'll call it x1. That's a y, and it's my first y, so I'll call that y1. That's an x, and it's a second x, so I'll call that x2. And that's a y, and it's my second y, so I'll call that y2. I think it's really important, by the way, to label your x and y so that you don't make a mistake when you come down here to fill in the numbers, because it's really easy to maybe get those out of order. y2, which would be 9, minus y1, which would be 8. And on the bottom, x2, which is 9, minus x1, which is 6. So if I simplify, 9 minus 8 would be 1, 9 minus 6 would be 3. Alright, so that means I've got a slope of 1/3. So I've got half of the puzzle figured out. My slope would be positive 1/3. The other part of the picture here, we just need to figure out what the y-intercept is going to be. So we've got y equals mx plus b. Again, it does not matter which one you pick. I don't know. Let's go back to the first one. We'll kind of go back and forth there. So the y of the first pair, and again, I'm using this first pair right here. Y of the first pair is 8. So I would have 8 equals m, which the slope is 1/3. So I've got 1/3. Times x, which the x of the first pair is 6. And again, kind of like on the last one, if this is a fraction, make the other guy a fraction, throw a 1 underneath it. So, because we know we're going to multiply fractions here, so let's just go ahead and make it a fraction. We kind of skip a step a little bit. If you're cross-canceling, you know that 3 goes into 6 2 times. Right? Or the other way you can look at it is multiply straight across, because that's how you multiply fractions. Just multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. The bottoms don't need to be the same, right? That's when you add fraction. That's add or subtract. You need common denominators. Otherwise, just go across the top, right? So 1 times 6 would be 6. 3 times 1 would be 3. 6 divided by 3, well, that would be 2. Subtract 2 from both sides, and we get b is equal to 6. So our y-intercept is 6. So we get y equals 1/3 x plus 6, which, as we said, the answer there was C. All right, so go ahead and pause now. And hey, actually, well, no, we don't need to pause. That was the last one for number 3. There will be no pausing. We shall move on. So number 4, write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line parallel to y equals negative 6x plus 4 that passes through the point negative 4, 4. Parallel. All right, well, what do you know about parallel lines? Well, you know that parallel lines don't touch. Why do parallel lines not touch? Well, look over here on the right side. I've got a graph of a couple different lines. Those lines do not touch, and they are parallel. Take a look at their equations. That's the equation of that line. That's the equation of the middle line. That's the equation of the one on the right. Notice anything that's all in common? Hopefully you should. Not only should the number stick out because it's the same, but it should stick out because, well, they also got it colored there for you as well. But what you notice there is that parallel lines have the same slope. So if you look at that number, and that number, the slope for each one of those is the same. Now the y-intercept is different. You know, where it crosses the y, that's different. But the slope is the same. And slope is just a measure of steepness. You know, slope is just a measure of how steep something is. So if lines are parallel, then that means they have the same steepness, right? They're kind of going off at the same angle. So that's all that means. So a little note here, and you want to write this down on the bottom left corner here. It says parallel lines have the same slope. So that's the reason why lines that are parallel, the reason why they're parallel is because they have the same slope. So what we're saying is there's some line out there, y equals negative 6x plus 4, And what we're wanting to know is that there's a line that's parallel to that that goes through the point negative 4, 4. Alright, so what we're looking for is that we, and actually I tell you what, let's graph that. Let me grab a graph real quick. Alright, so magically there a graph appears. Let's kind of, and I'm just going to graph this, not because you have to graph this on this question, but again, I'm wanting you to get a visual of what's happening here. I want you to see what's happening. So this says y equals negative 6x plus 4. So if I were to graph that line, for instance, that says there's a y-intercept of positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that has a slope of negative 6, which means go down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then over 1. And then what we're saying is that that is one of the lines. So let me get my ruler that you can't see. Alright. And then what it's saying is it's saying there's another line, one of these lines, either A, B, C, or D, one of these lines that is parallel to that line that goes through the point negative 4, 4. Right, and they tell us that because they tell us that right there, negative 4, 4. So if I went to negative 4, 4, I would be at negative 4, so that means left 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what it's saying is it's saying there's some line, and if it were going to be parallel, you know, that it looks something like that. Not that my line's perfectly straight, but you know, you kind of get the idea there. Actually, that is pretty bad. Let me try that again. Let's get a better line on that one. So we want to draw something that's parallel. There we go. That's better. Now, what I want to know is that what is the equation of this line? Because, see, I don't know, in terms of y equals mx plus b, what is the equation of this line? I don't know what the y-intercept is, and I don't know what the slope is of that particular line. All I know is that it goes through the point negative 4, 4. Well, but we just said if parallel lines have the same slope, and this other line has a slope of negative 6, a little too dark. If this other line has a slope of negative 6, then my green line over here must also have a slope of negative 6. So I'm going to use the same number. I'm just kind of stealing the slope. So y equals negative 6 x plus the y-intercept. Now, if you notice my y-intercept on my green line, and because my graph, it's kind of hard to tell because my graph doesn't go down far enough. Maybe this is negative 6 down here, negative 7, negative 8, something like that, right? So maybe that kind of goes down there pretty far. I don't know. So I would have to figure out, I don't know what the y-intercept is, but what I can do is I can take the x and the y they give me, because they give me an x of negative 4, and they give me a y of positive 4. So I can just take y equals mx plus b. Now this, you should be fairly confident and comfortable with how to do this at this point, because we've done this a million times. Y equals 4. Maybe not a million, but we've done it a couple times now at this point. Slope is negative 6 times x, which the x they give us is positive 4. I'm sorry, negative 4, negative 4. The x they give us is negative 4. The y was positive 4. And then plus b. Alright, well, let's just solve that one for b. So negative 6 times negative 4, that would be a positive 24. And the opposite of a positive 24 would be a negative 24. So let's subtract 24 from both sides. You have more negatives than you do positives, and you have 20 more negatives. So b would be equal to negative 20. So no mystery now. My y-intercept is equal to a negative 20. And that would be my answer. So I'd get y equals negative 6x minus 20. So the answer there would be b. That would be my answer. Okay. And again, that worked because the line that we were looking at, they told us it was parallel. So parallel lines have the same slope. So whatever the slope of this line was, that means that my line would have the same slope. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video now and try number 4 in the middle. All right, well, let's check your answer for number 4 in the middle. Should have got, oh, we didn't give you the answer yet. Should have already had that marked. Let's see, what is the answer to number 4 in the middle? The answer for number 4 in the middle is negative 7x plus 71. So you should have got A. So if you got A, go ahead and fast forward to number 4 on the right side. Pause it, try number 4 on the right, and then you can check your answer from there. If you did not get A for your answer on number 4, well, again, let's go ahead and walk through it. All right, so what we end up with here is that I've got an equation, and then they tell me that equation is y equals negative 7x plus 8. Couldn't read that with my highlighting there. Y equals negative 7x plus 8. All right, and then so I know that slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So we've already established in that last question that parallel lines have the same slope. So whatever the slope of this line, my line is going to have the same slope. So if that has a slope of negative 7, that means that my line is going to have a slope of negative 7. So that would be y equals negative 7x plus, and then b, whatever the b is. We don't know what the b is yet, so that's what we're looking for. Now, they do give us an x and a y, so they tell us that x is equal to 9, and then they tell me that y is equal to 8. So I'm going to use those numbers right there. So I'm going to come over here, y equals mx plus b. I'm just using the x and the y they give me, so, and maybe let me label that a little better. So there's my x, and there's my y. So my y is equal to 8. Equals my slope, which they told me is negative 7, times x, which is 9. And by the way, you notice, my pause there is that as I'm writing over here on the right side, I'm looking back over here at the left side to see what my x and y are, which is why it's really important that you label it. Again, don't try to do all this stuff off the top of your head, memorize everything. You want to make sure you have things labeled so that you're not making those kinds of mistakes. All right, so we got 8 equals a negative 63 plus b. Add 63 to both sides, and we get b is equal to 71. By the way, you notice I didn't try to graph that, and I'm not going to try to graph y-intercept to 71. I don't have graph paper that big. But there you go. That's what it would be. And again, we don't have to graph. I'm just doing that so you can see what's going on with the problem. All right, so y equals negative 7x plus 71. All right, so go ahead and pause now and try number 4 on the right side. All right, so let's check number 4 on the right side. For number 4 on the right side, you should have got C. Y equals 3x minus 15. So if you did get that as a correct answer, good job. Go ahead and fast forward and meet me up at number 5. If you did not get that as your answer, then let's hold on here together and figure out what exactly happened. So the equation they give us, they tell us y equals 3x minus 2, and they tell me that it's parallel, right, that it's got a slope of a positive 3. So again, the particular line that I'm looking at has a y-intercept of negative 2, and it has a slope of 3. So up 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then what they're saying is there's some other line that goes through the point 4, negative 3. So 4, negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, down 1, 2, 3. And what I don't know is, I don't know what the slope is, but they tell me it's parallel. So if it's parallel, then I'm going to draw, some line that doesn't touch. What I'm wondering is, what is the equation of that particular line? I know that the equation of this other line over here is y equals 3x minus 2. What I don't know is I don't know what the equation of the green line is. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm going to take the fact that I know slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. That's kind of my given here. At least that's the formula I'm working with. Kind of move some stuff around here. Alright, so let's see what it is. I know that y equals m, which the m in this case, they tell me that the slope, that's my slope right there, that the slope is 3. X plus, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the y-intercept. See, if I look at this picture, here's my green line. The y-intercept, you know, it crosses maybe somewhere down here. And actually, that should make sense, because if we already know the answer is negative 15, if this is negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, so on, yeah, that would make sense that that's probably negative 15 down there. But, you know, we want to prove it. So let's look at what our x and our y are. Well, so they tell us there's an x of 4, and there's a y of negative 3. So I'm going to use my slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And they tell me the y is negative 3. So I've got a y of negative 3 equals m, which my slope is 3. We've already established that. X, which is 4. And again, the colors aren't random here. I'm using colors to color coordinate everything, so hopefully that makes it a little easier for you to see as far as which numbers are going where, and then plus b. Alright, so we got negative 3 equals 12 plus b. Subtract 12 from both sides, and you get b is equal to a negative 15. So my y-intercept on this one is going to be a negative 15. So therefore, this equation of this particular line would be y equals 3x minus 15. And actually, you know, if you look at this one over here, you know, the slope is 3. I almost got the slope, you know, right there, right? So up 3 over 1. So, you know, it should have been actually a little steeper, so we kind of drew that off a little bit. But that's kind of the idea. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. About halfway there. Thanks for hanging in there. So we're at number 5. So go ahead and turn over. That would be on the back side of the first page there in your study guide. So let's take a look at number 5. Now what this says, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line perpendicular. Perpendicular. So that's something a little different. Perpendicular to y equals 3x minus 3 that passes through the point 6, negative 3. So perpendicular, let's look at that word and what that means. So perpendicular, and if you look at the graph I have here over here on the right side, we know that parallel lines don't touch, right? They kind of run alongside each other. Perpendicular lines, however, they do cross, and they actually cross at a 90-degree angle. So these two lines do cross, and it's how they cross. They cross at a 90-degree angle. You know, sometimes you hear that, you know, maybe directions that, for instance, let's talk about streets. Let's talk about the street that's right in front of us. Gonzales and Oxnard Boulevard, right? Gonzales and Oxnard Boulevard are perpendicular to one another because they meet, and they meet roughly at a 90-degree angle, right? So that's, maybe you hear somebody use that word perpendicular when they're talking about streets. So one thing to notice here is notice the slope. They're not the same because that's for with parallel lines. Notice what the slopes are. That's a positive 2 and that's a negative 1/2. So they're actually opposites, right? Because one's positive, one's negative. But they're also, it's flipped. They're reciprocals. See, that's a positive 2, that's a negative 1/2. So another note to make here, if you look at the bottom left down here, is that perpendicular lines, and I'll go ahead and highlight this, perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So what that means is that if it says that one line has a slope of 3, and maybe let's graph that. Let me grab a graph real quick. All right. Well, hey, like magic, there's my graph. So let's see. If I've got a line that says y equals 3x minus 3, so let me just graph that. Right, that's a y-intercept of negative 3. So 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. It says it's got a slope of 3, 1, 2, 3, and then over 1. So let's say you got some line that looks like that. And what we're saying is that this line is y equals 3x minus 3. And then what it's saying is there's a second line that is perpendicular to that goes through the point 6, negative 3. So 6, negative 3 would be somewhere down here. Now for it to be perpendicular, what that means is that it crosses, almost very similar to how this graph crosses. What it means is that it crosses And again, I'm just drawing a rough sketch here. I don't know if that's exactly what it looks like. But, so something of that nature. And then it passes through that particular point. Right? And then it has, where it crosses, that would be a 90-degree angle. So what we want to know is what's the equation of that particular line. Well, so we're still going to start in the same place, which is we're looking for what the line would be in slope-intercept form. So let's see what that would be. Erase that. All right, so y equals the slope. Now, so what we said is that the slope would be an opposite reciprocal. So if you talked about that the slope of this line is equal to 3, then the opposite reciprocal of that would be a negative 1 over 3. Because we're taking the opposite of it and flipping the fraction. So that would actually be a negative 1/3 x plus b. Plus b, which we don't know what the b is. That's our y-intercept. Now right away you could see that if the slope is a negative 1/3, you could cancel a because that says positive 3. Cancel c because that also says positive 3. So we know it's in between b and d. So let's figure out which one that it would be. Now this part of it's the same as far as how do you find your b. Again, should feel pretty comfortable with this because we've done now the kind of the same procedure on the last couple problems, which is that if you want to figure out what the y-intercept is, just start with slope-intercept form, plug in what you know to solve for what you don't know, right? Which in this case is the y-intercept. All right, so my y is negative 3. So I've got negative 3 equals m, which the slope is a negative 1/3. So I've got a negative 1/3 times x, which is 6. Same deal here, since I'm working with fractions. If one guy's a fraction, make the other guy a fraction. So I can make 6 a fraction by putting it over 1, and then plus b. And really kind of same thing here. We'll say negative 3 equals, now negative 1 times 6 would be a negative 6. 3 times 1 would be 3. And we know that negative 6 divided by 3 would be a negative 2. And then if we add 2 to both sides, we get b is equal to negative 1, right? Because you have more negatives. So our answer there would be y equals negative 1/3 x minus 1. By the way, you might be wondering, hey, what's up with the graph, right? Because if you look back at the graph, y equals negative 1/3 x minus 1, which would be d. If you look back at the graph, you notice that my y-intercept, and this is why we don't try to solve this by graphing. If you notice my y-intercept, it looks like my y-intercept is trying to say that it crosses up there at positive 2. Well, keep in mind, I drew that freehand, and this is one of the reasons why we don't try to do these problems necessarily by graphing, because it's real easy to not draw the line straight and you kind of get off. So really, what my line should have looked like is that it should have been much flatter. It should have been something like that, right? But again, I was drawing it freehand, which is the danger of trying to do that. So this is why we solve it algebraically, which is what we did right here, versus trying to solve it graphically, because again, there's some accuracy issues with our picture. All right, so perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So for your slope, whatever slope they give you, you're going to take the opposite reciprocal of that and then solve for b. All right, well, let's take a moment, go ahead and pause, and try number 5 in the middle. All right, well, welcome back, and let's see what you got. Number 5 in the middle should have got a, y equals 1/3 x minus 6. If you did get that correct, good for you. Move on to pause here and move on to number 5. Try number 5 on the right side. If you didn't get it, that's all right. Let's take a look and see what happened there. All right, so again, perpendicular means that the two lines meet, and they meet at a 90-degree angle. So what that means is that the lines, their slopes, the slopes are not parallel. So, I'm sorry, the lines are not parallel, so their slopes are not the same. So what we have to do is that we have to, actually let me be a little more clear with my highlighting, Because what we're really focusing on, the reason why I went back and kind of changed my highlighting there, is because I'm only focusing on the slope. I don't really care about that -9. I'm only looking at the slope. So if the slope of this particular line is -3, but we're looking for the opposite reciprocal, so the opposite of a -3 would be a +3, and if you flip that over, it would be a fraction, so it would be a +1/3. So when it comes to finding what my equation would be, so I would have y equals, actually let me get my right color on there, y equals the slope, which is a +1/3, x plus b. And by the way, you notice that if we know that the slope is a +1/3, then you can cancel out b, because that says -3. And then you know it's between a and c. Now obviously, we know the answer is a, but I'm just saying on a test, you know, that's part of the whole use the test to take the test, is you're going through it, eliminate choices. Alright, so for the last time, or maybe second to last time, right? No, actually second to last time, we're going to come over here and we're going to solve for the y-intercept, y equals mx plus b. Well, let's use the x and the y that they give us. They give us an x of -9 and a y of -9. Oh, same numbers. So -9 equals the slope, which again we've already established is 1/3, times x, which is a -9. And again, we'll go ahead and make that a fraction, and then plus b. And hopefully you feel a little bit better about the fractions. I know sometimes people freak out by fractions, but again, you're just multiplying straight across. 1 times -9 is a -9. 3 times 1 is a +3. -9 divided by 3 would be a -3 plus b. And then you're going to add 3 to both sides, and so you get b is equal to -6. Alright, so that means our y-intercept would be a -6, no longer a mystery. Let me erase that. I now know that my y-intercept is equal to a -6, which is a. Alright, so go ahead and pause here and try number 5 on the right side. Alrighty, so for number 5 on the right side, you should have got a as well. Y equals 1/3 x plus 10. And if you did get that correct, then let's go ahead and move on to number 6. If you didn't get it correct, alright, we'll just kind of hang on and see what happened there. So perpendicular lines, again, final time here, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. Opposite reciprocals. Parallel, same slope. Perpendicular, opposite reciprocal. So if it's perpendicular, what that means is that the slope, if they tell you there's some line that has a slope of -3, anything perpendicular to that is going to have an opposite reciprocal slope. So opposite of a -3 would be a +3, reciprocal meaning flip it, would be 1/3. So as far as, and this is maybe the last time here, we're going to have to drag down our slope-intercept form. You notice, by the way, the first 5 problems were really all the same type of problem, just asked a different way. You know, the first one, they gave you the slope and the y-intercept. The second one, they gave you the slope, not the y-intercept. The third one, they didn't give you either the slope or the y-intercept. And then now 4 and 5 are asking you about parallel and perpendicular lines. But in all of those, it was pretty much the same thing where you had to solve or figure out the slope and y-intercept if it wasn't provided to you. Alright, y equals 1/3, which in a way, I guess the slope is provided to you here. You just have to know that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. Plus the y-intercept, which would be, well, who knows? I don't know. That's what I'm looking for. So let's check out what x and a y they gave us. So kind. Thank you for that x and the y, because that helps us figure out what the y-intercept would be. Y equals mx plus b, and the y is equal to 9, equals m, which is positive 1/3, x, which is a negative 3. And again, same deal. Let's go ahead and make it a fraction since the other guy's a fraction, plus b. Multiply straight across the top. So 1 times negative 3 is a negative 3. 3 times 1 is 3. So negative 3 divided by 3 would be a negative 1. So that when you solve for b by adding 1 to both sides, you get b is equal to 10. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully that didn't get cut off down there. And so, scroll down a little bit. So b is equal to 10, and so that means that our y-intercept would be, nope, that's an eraser. Our y-intercept would be 10. Y equals 1/3 x plus 10. Alright, so over halfway done, and which, by the way, I should tell you, so those were probably the more difficult problems, so I think you'll see from this point we're going to be going downhill a little bit. So let's take a look at number 6. Okay, so here's the deal with number 6. It says, which point lies on the line defined by y equals 8x minus 3? So they're telling you there's some line, y equals 8x minus 3, and then what they're telling us is that if you graphed that line, which one of these points, A, B, C, or D, would be on that line? Well, again, we're not going to solve it graphically, but I am going to graph it just to give you a visual. Got a y-intercept of negative 3. Got a slope of positive 8, so that would be up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then over 1. And then what we're saying here is that you've got some line that looks like this. And again, I'm just kind of freehanding that. So it's not going to be super accurate, which is why we're not going to solve it by graphing. And then what it's saying is it's saying which one of these points is on that line. So is the point 13, negative 2 on that line? Well, 13, negative 2, 13, negative 2 would be way out here, right? Because 13 over, 2 down. So that would be 13, negative 2. That's not even close to that line. I'm thinking that's not the answer. 13 positive 2 would be right there. Again, not even close to that line, so I'm thinking that's not the answer. C says 213. So 2, and then if I go up 13, which would be right there. Now that's pretty close. Now that may actually even be on the line, because keep in mind I drew that green line freehand, so it might be off a little bit, but that would be 213 at that point right there. So I'm thinking probably that's going to be the answer. Let me fix that real quick. 213. And then let's look at what's the other one? Negative 213. So negative 213 would be 2 to the left and then 13 up. Oh yeah, see, that's not even close. So negative 213 would be way over there. So what's the point that is on that line? Well, it looks like 213 is the point that's on that line. So my answer would be C. Now, I solved that graphically, but I had graph paper, so it was easier for me to do that. And you could always draw your own graph, but then again, the problem is if you don't have graph paper, then maybe it's not as accurate. So we need to find a way of saying, okay, how do I figure out what the answer is if I don't have graph paper? So again, this is solving it graphically, because we're using a graph. And this over here, what we're going to do is solve it algebraically, because that means that we're solving it by using algebra. So the way I would do this, again, is I would take the equation they give me, y equals 8x minus 3, and each one of these things represent, right, each one of these numbers, that represents an x, and that represents a y. So what I could do for each one of these is just plug in the x and the y to see which one gives me a true statement. What I mean by that is that if I plugged in a y, let's say if I just tried a, for instance, right? The y is negative 2 equals 8 times x, which is 13, because again I'm trying a, and then minus 3. So negative 2 equals 13 times 8. Well, you know, this is in middle math class. If we need to do a little scratch work, we can always do that. Let's see, 13 times 8. That would be 24. Carry the 2. Okay, 104. And then it says negative 2. So 104 minus 3 is equal to 101. Is that true? Negative 2 is equal to 101? No, that's not true. Right? Negative 2 is not the same thing as 101. So that's actually not true. So that's how I know that A is not the answer. Now, you know, you could go through there and try each one of these, but I actually already kind of know what the answer is. I think it's C. So let me just try C, and I'm just going to verify this algebraically. So I'm going to take the x for C, which is 2, and I'm going to take the y for C, which is 13. And let me go ahead and plug that in. So 13 equals 8 times x. I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. So 13 equals 8 times x, which the x is equal to... Oh, what's the x equal to? X is equal to 2, and then minus 3. Again, using the colors so that everything's color-coded, so you kind of know where I'm coming from on that one. So this says 13 is equal to 16 minus 3. 16 minus 3 is equal to 13. Oh, that is true. Ding, 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 ding. Right, see, this was false over here. Negative 2 is not equal to 101. This, however, is true. 13 is equal to 13. The numbers match, right? So that's what we're doing, is we're just plugging in till we find which one where the numbers match. Well, the numbers match, so our answer would be C. Which matches up, by the way, with what I thought it would be. I graphed it, and I figured out it was probably going to be 213, and then so that's how I solved it graphically. This is how I solved it algebraically. Now, again, the focus on this particular test is to solve it algebraically, which is to do what I just did right here. And you can do some mental math. You know, you don't have to start at A and then go to B, then C, then D. You can do some mental math and kind of plug in what you think the answer might be, but then you still want to solve it or prove it by doing the substitution to show that the numbers match. So, but again, and once you find the answer, by the way, I know that C is the answer. I don't have to plug in B. I don't have to plug in D, because I know they're not the answer. So you can just stop there and kind of move on to the next one. So let's go ahead and pause now and try number 6 in the middle. Alright, so let's see what you got for number 6 in the middle. For number 6 in the middle, you should have got D. And again, if you got that correct, then go ahead and fast forward and head on to number 6 on the right side. If you did not get that correct, then hang around for an explanation there. And let me start by graphing this, because I think this is a really good visual way to see this. It says that y is equal to x plus 5. So what that means is that I've got a y-intercept of 5, and then a slope. And by the way, I don't know if we covered this earlier, but if you're like, hey, well, the slope's the number in front of x, but you're like, hey, there's no number there. Well, it's really that there's a 1 there, and then that would be 1 over 1. So that means that you would go up 1 over 1. And then so you've got a line that looks something like this. And maybe I'll try to draw a little better this time. Alright, and what we're looking for is we're saying which one of these points goes through that line. So if I tried, for instance, I don't know, A, which is 1, negative 6, 1, negative 6 would be way down here. Well, that's not even close. I'm thinking it's not A. Let's try B, negative 1, 6. So negative 1 and then 6, which is right there. It's close, but I don't know. It's close, but I'm not sure about that. Let's try 1, negative 4. So 1, negative 4. No, that's not even close. It's way down there. That's way off. And let's look at D. D says negative 1, 4. Well, negative 1, 4 would be right there. So I'm thinking that negative 1, 4 is probably the answer if I were solving that graphically, which is something you can always do. You know, on a test, it doesn't say you have to solve it this way or that way. That would be a perfectly acceptable way of solving that. Again, the problem is I have graph paper, so it's a little easier for me. You may not have graph paper, and then drawing it freehand, you may not get as as accurate of a picture as what you need, which is why we're going to look at solving it algebraically. So y equals x plus 5. Now, I already know the answer is D, so I'm not going to go through there and show you every single one. What I will do, though, is because I want you to see an example and a non-example. I want you to see how it works, how you know it works and how you know it doesn't work. So, for instance, I'm going to try C, which I know is not the right answer, but again, I just want you to see how it works. There's your x, right? And I'll go ahead and mark it. That's my x as well. And then there's my y. And then all I'm doing is I'm just plugging it in. So I would have, and again, I'm trying C. So this would be negative 4 equals x, which is positive 1, and then plus 5. And then so I've got negative 4, 1 plus 5 would be 6. Oh, well, negative 4 does not equal 6. That's false. It doesn't match. Doesn't match. Right? So that's how I know that, for instance, C would not be the answer. Now let me try D. And again, I'm pretending that I don't already know that D is the answer, which I do. But again, we're just doing a little pretending here. Kind of move down a little bit. So let's say we try the y, which is 4, equals x, which is negative 1, and then plus b. Plus b. All right. Wow, I'm thinking totally different. You know, I got so stuck with the solving for the y-intercept. Wow. Let's try that again. We actually know what the y-intercept is. We know that it's a positive 5. Wow. All right, so 4 equals negative 1 plus 5, which is 4. Ding, 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 woohoo. Right, 4 equals 4. That is true. The numbers do match. True. Numbers match. So that's how I know that's my answer. So that's how I know that D is the answer. And again, once you find the one, you don't have to show the work for all of them. You just show the work for the one that you know that works. So the one that works in this case would be D. Again, I showed you C not because I had to. I just wanted you to see an example of something of why C wasn't the answer, because the numbers didn't match. The answer was false there. All right, so pause here and let's try number 6 on the right. All right, so should have number 6 on the right side. Should have got A. Should have got A. 2 zeros, the answers you should have got here. So if you did get that correct, then let's go ahead and move along to number 7. I'll meet you there. If you didn't get this one correct, then I'll hang out with you and we'll figure out what happened. And again, I want to start by graphing this, not because I have to, but I'm just really trying to emphasize the visual here on what's happening. You got a line y equals 2x minus 4, a y-intercept of negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And by the way, if you don't know how I'm graphing the line y equals 2x minus 4, then you need to come in and redo the test before this on how to graph. Because by the way, you should be following me. When I'm graphing y equals 2x minus 4 and I tell you it's a y-intercept of negative 4 and a slope of 2, that shouldn't be new to you. Now, if it is, that's okay. That just means you need to go back and redo the previous test as well, because that means that you're not quite as strong at graphing as maybe you should be. So I've got a line that looks something like that. And what it's saying is which one of those points is on that line. So if I looked at 2, 0, 2, 0, ding, 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 right there. So that point is on the line. Now I can prove the other ones don't work, because the one right next to it would be 3, 0. That's not on the line. 3, negative 2. 3, negative 2 would be down here. Well, that's not on the line. 3, negative 2. If I tried negative 2, 3, that's not even close. Negative 2, 3. That's way off. Right? So the only point that's actually on that line is A, 2, 0. Now I can prove that by substituting in. So y equals 2x minus 4. And I'm just going to use the x that they give me and the y they give me. And I'm not going to try the other ones. I'm just going to show to you the one that does work. 0 equals 2 times x, which would be 2, minus 4. And so I get 0 equals 4 minus 4, 0 equals 0. That is true. 0 does equal 0. That's true. The numbers do match. So that's how I know the answer would be A, rather. All right, so let's go ahead and move along and take a look at number 7. We're almost there. Hang in there. It says, which point lies on the line defined by negative 2x plus 3y equals 2? Well, hey, it's pretty much the same question. It's just saying, hey, here's a line. Which one of these points is on that line? The only difference with this question is that the equation is not in slope-intercept form. So you notice that all the equations, let me go back to 6 real quick. You notice the equations here, y equals 2x minus 4, that's in slope-intercept form. You notice this, that's not in slope-intercept form. So what we're going to have to do is do the same thing, plug in x and y. It's just that we're going to have to deal with some fractions, if you notice there. Right? So I'm not actually going to go through the trouble of graphing on this one. What I want to do is I just want to take the equation they give me, negative 2x plus 3y equals 2. And then all I'm doing is I'm just plugging in, I don't know, I'll start with A. And I'll take the x and the y they give me. There's x, there's y. So it says negative 2 times x, which in this case is a fraction, actually. It's 1/3. Well, if that's a fraction, then let me go ahead and get my eraser out. Let me go ahead and change this to a fraction as well then. So let me go ahead and say that that's going to be a negative 2 over 1. So I'll go ahead and make that change right now because I know I'm going to want to multiply straight across. Plus 3 times y, which the y in that case is 3, equals 2. Alright, so let's multiply across. Negative 2 times 1 would be a negative 2 over 3. Right, because 1 times 3 would be 3. Plus 9 is equal to 2. Well, a negative 2/3 plus 9, which would be 8 1/3, is not equal to 2. Right, so these numbers, if I rewrote it this way, if I said 8 1/3, those numbers do not match. So the answer is not A. And if you didn't follow exactly how I got from negative 2/3 plus 9 and then 8 1/3, don't worry about that. Hopefully what you did notice is that this on the left does not and would not match what's on the right. So I know the answer is not A. Let me try B. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to try B. Same deal. Here's my x, and here's my y. So I'm going to copy the equation as it is. Now, same deal. You notice the x is a fraction again. It's 1/2. So let me go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and write this as a fraction as well, like negative 2 over 1. And then I'm going to write that as a fraction. Plus 3 times y is equal to 2. And then let me go ahead and plug in my x, which would be 1/2. And then my y, which is 1. So really same thing as the other problem. The only twist here is there's a fraction. But otherwise, it's exactly the same idea. And I guess also you could say, too, the other thing is different. The equation, as they give it to us, they throw it at us in standard form versus slope-intercept form. So only difference there. Let's multiply straight across the top. Negative 2 times 1, which would be a negative 2. 1 times 2, which would be 2. 3 times 1, which would be 3. Negative 2 divided by 2 would be a negative 1. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. 2 equals 2. We got a winner. 2 equals 2. The numbers do match. That is true. So then that means that B would be our answer. And again, I don't have to. I'm not trying to make you do more work than what you need to. So once you know what the answer is, you don't have to keep going. You don't have to do C. You don't have to do B. Just stop there. All right. Well, instead of stopping, we'll pause and let you try number 7 in the middle. Alright, so let's see what you should have got for number 7 in the middle. Should have got D, a negative 1/4 for your x, and a positive 4 for your y. Let me get rid of this graph. So again, if you got that, awesome. Way to go. And you can fast forward to number 7 on the right side. If you didn't get that, then let's see maybe what happened on that particular one. So why is D the answer? I'll just go ahead and straight and show you. Hopefully you get the idea that you know it's not the answer. Let me go back. You know it's not the answer when you get something where the numbers don't match. You're looking for the one where the numbers do match. So I'll show you why D works. So negative 1/4 and 4. So this would be, here's my x, by the way, and then here's my y. Okay, so let's say we've got 4. Let me we're trying D, by the way, right? So I've got 4 times x minus 2 times y equals negative 9. Well, again, my x on this one is a negative 1/4. So let me fix that. Negative 1/4. And then my y is a positive 4. Well, you know, again, if one's a fraction, let's go ahead and make the other fraction. Let me get my eraser out. Let me go ahead and make that a fraction. And again, you make anything a fraction by putting 1 underneath it. And then, so let's multiply across the top. 4 times negative 1 would be a negative 4. 1 times 4 would be 4. Negative 2 times 4 would be a negative 8 equals negative 9. Now, negative 1 minus 8 equals negative 9. So negative 9 equals, well, negative 9. So that is true. Ding, ding, ding. Right? So that is true. So that's why D would be the answer for number 7. All right, so pause now. Try number 7 on the right. All right, so let's see what you got for number 7 on the right side. Should have got B. And again, if you got that right, let's go ahead and fast forward to number 8. And if you didn't get that right, well, that's okay. Let's see what happened. 2x plus 3y equals 10. That's the equation we're working with. And again, I'll show you the one that works, right? So B works. B gives you a true statement. So let's see why. 2, that's a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and just put 2, write this 2 right here, this above it. I'm just going to go ahead and make that a fraction by making it 2 over 1 plus 3 times y, which equals 10. All right, so let's plug it in. Here's my x. Here is my y. So let's plug that in. So the x is equal to 1/2. The y is equal to 3. And I don't know, let's see what we got there. So 2 times 1 would be 2. 1 times 2 would also be 2. 3 times 3 would be 9. 2 divided by 2 would be 1. 1 plus 9, indeed, is equal to 10. 10 equals 10. That is true. So that is why the answer would be B. All right, so let's look at number 8. So 8 says which point does not lie on the line. So let's really emphasize and look at does not lie on the line. So what that means is that if you graphed this line, 3x plus 4y equals 18, which one of these points is not on that line? So if I graphed it, let me put it in slope-intercept form for you first. I didn't graph the last one, but because this one's a little different, I do want you to see this one. And again, if I'm getting it over to slope-intercept form, so I'm getting the x on the other side. I'm trying to get y by itself. And if you're not too sure about how to move from standard form to slope-intercept form, like what I'm doing right here, then again, you might want to come in and redo that last test. Now, 18 over 4, that actually doesn't divide evenly. So what we'd end up with on that one, the y-intercept actually wouldn't be a whole number. I mean, what I could do is I could reduce that, right? So, you know, how many times, what can you divide both of those by? You know, you can divide them both by 2, so you get 9 over 2. And then you say, like, well, how many times does 2 go into 9? Well, it goes into 4, right? So what this means is that the y-intercept on this particular one is somewhere between 4 and 5. And then it would have a slope of down 3 over 4. And then over 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, this is one of the reasons why we don't try to solve everything graphically, is because sometimes you get some funky stuff like this. You get a y-intercept of a 9 over 2, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to graph. So this is why we try to solve things algebraically instead of graphically. I don't know. Let's see if my picture works out. A says 2, 3. 2, 3 would be right about here. So that point actually is on the line. Let's try 6, 0. 6, 0 would be right here. So that point is also on the line. Let's try C. C is 3, 4. So 3, 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4 actually would be up here. I don't think that's going to be on the line. Let me double check this last point. Negative 2, 6. Negative 2, 6 would be negative 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would be right there. That is on the line. So what I'm thinking, the only one that's not on that line is 3, 4. It's the only one that's not on that line. So I solved it graphically, but as we pointed out, graphically it gets a little messy because if you get some funky numbers. So we want to solve it algebraically. How would we do that? Well, think back to what we did on number 7. On number 7, we were looking for the one that gave you a true statement. You know, the one that gave you where the numbers matched. So if we're looking for does not, we're looking for the one that gives you the one that's false, right? So we want, in this case, we want to know which one is false. Or another way to think of it, you know, which one do the numbers not match? So let me show you one where the numbers do match so you can see what it would look like. Again, we're using this right here. 3x plus 4y equals 18. So 3 times x plus 4 times y equals 18. So I don't know, I'm just going to use A. Now I know that A is not the answer, but I just want you to see how I know A is not the answer. So 3 times x, which is 2, and then plus 4 times y, which is 3. And then, so what this ends up being is 6 plus 12 equals 18. 18 equals 18. Now that's true, right? But remember what we're looking for here. We're looking for the one that does not lie on the line, meaning we're looking for the one that's false. So this actually is true, which means that A is not the answer. Now, I know that the answer is C, but let me prove to you why the answer is C. So I'm going to try this again. Let's remove that. So let me try that again. But this time, I'm actually going to try C. I'm a little short on space, so let me do one of these right here. So it's the same equation, just we're going to plug in a different x and y. So let's try, we know the answer is C, so let's try C. So 3, 4. So we got an x of 3, and you got a y of 4. So 3x, which would be 3 times 3, plus 4 times y, which is 4. And so let's see what we get there. 9 plus 16 equals 18. 25 equals 18. No, 25 does not equal 18. Right? That is not true. So this is false. Well, again, hey, it said which one does not lie on the line. So that's how we know that the answer would be C. Because we were looking for the one that does not lie on the line. And 3, 4 does not lie on that line. Alright, so try number, pause here, try number 8 in the middle. Again, you're looking for the one that's false. So try number 8 in the middle. Alright, so let's check number 8 in the middle. So you should have got C, 2, 2, does not lie on the line. If you got that as an answer, then go ahead and try number 8 on the right side. If you did not, then hang around and let's see what the explanation there would be. We were looking for, and I'm not going to graph it on this one, I'm just going to show you, we're looking for the one that's false, right? When it says which one does not lie on the line, we're looking for the answer that's false. Alright, so 2x plus 5y equals 16. And so let's see what we got there. So we're looking for, we know the answer is C, by the way. Let me erase this. So I'm not going to show you the ones, I'm not going to show you the ones that do work. I'm going to show you the one that doesn't work. C does not work. And again, what I mean by work is I mean, does it give you a true or false statement? And C will give you a false statement. So there's x, there's y. So x would be equal to 2. Y would be equal to 2. And let's see what you get there. So 4 plus 10. So 14 equals 16. Does 14 equal 16? No, it does not. Right? That is false. So then that's how I know that the answer would be C. Okay? And again, if I graphed this, what I would find is that if I put this line on a graph, I would find that that line goes through A, B, and D. It just doesn't touch D. Or I'm sorry, C. All right, pause here and try number 8 on the right side. All right, so let's see what you got for number 8 on the right side. Should have got A. Should have got 0, 1 is the answer you should have got for 8. If you got that, great. Fast forward to number 9. If you didn't, let's look at the answer on that one. So 2x minus 6y equals 2. Again, because it says which one does not, right, we were looking for the one that's false. The one where the numbers don't match. That's what we're looking for. So the answer is A. So let me just go ahead and try A, since we know that that's what the answer is. Minus 6. And so let's see. Let's try x, which would be 0. And let's try 1, which would be our y. And so 2 times 0 would be 0. Minus 6 equals 2. 0 minus 6, well, that just would be negative 6. Negative 6 is not equal to 2. That is false, so that's how I know that A would be the correct answer. Alright, so hang in there, almost there. We just got 2 left. You've made it this far. Proud of you for working as hard as you have this far. Hopefully this has started to make a little bit more sense to you. Glad you're here today. So let's just finish this out with these last 2 problems. And both of these problems are of a similar idea. So the question says, what is the x-intercept of the graph of 3x minus 2y equals 19? Now, what it's saying is if you graphed that particular line, what would be the x-intercept of it? Meaning, at what point would that line go through the x-axis? Well, one thing you notice about the x-intercept, and take a look at the picture there I have over on the right side, is that you notice the x-intercept, we're talking about that point right there. We're talking about the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. Well, the point at which it crosses the x-axis, if you think about it, it's gone out, some number to the right. And maybe on this graph, maybe that's 3 or something, who knows. But what you notice, though, is that the y is 0, because it hasn't, where it touches the x, it hasn't gone above or below the line, because it's sitting right on the line. So that means the y value would be 0. So if you're looking for the x-intercept, then what that means is that the y would be equal to 0 at that point, right? So what we could say is that 3x minus 2 times y, which would be 0, equals 19. Now 3x minus 2 times 0 would be 0. So that actually just disappears, so you end up with 3x equals 19. So this is why, by the way, some people call this the cover-up method, is that if you're looking for the x-intercept, you would cover up the y, meaning that the y would not be there. Meaning that you almost, because it's equal to 0, and then you just solve the equation that's left for x. So x would equal 19 over 3, so the answer there would be B. Right? And again, the reason why we put in a 0 there is because they were asking for the x-intercept. So at the x-intercept, look back over at the graph, at that point, the point is sitting on the x, so that means it didn't go up or down because it's sitting on the line. So if it's sitting on the line, that means the y is equal to 0 at that point, which would be, for this one, would be 19 over 3. All right, so pause now and try number 9 in the middle. All right, so let's take a look at number 9. So number 9 in the middle should have got 17 over 6. If you got that as an answer, great. Move on to number 9 on the right side. If you didn't get it, let's maybe see what the answer should have been there and why it should have been. So again, the idea of this x-intercept, as we said over here, is that at the x-intercept, the y value is equal to 0. So it's almost as if the y doesn't exist. See, I'm kind of scribbling out the y. So if I scribbled out the y and I said, well, what's left over? What's left over is 6x equals 17. So it's almost saying, like, I just want to focus on the x. I don't care about the y if I'm looking just for the x-intercept. Now, mathematically, where that comes from is the idea, right, because I can't just magically scribble things out. Really, what I'm saying is that, I'm saying 3 times 0, negative 3 times 0, right, because the y at that point is equal to 0. But that's where it ends up being. You just end up kind of covering that up, so it ends up being x equals 17 over 6. So that's where you'd get A. So go ahead and pause the video and try number 9 on the right side. Alright, so let's see what you got for number 9. Should have got C, 11 over 8. If you got that, great. Move on to number 10. If you didn't, let's see what the answer would be for that one. 8x minus 11y equals 11. So again, we're looking for the x-intercept. So the at the x-intercept, the y is equal to 0. And again, the reason for that is right there, is that it's sitting on the line, so that means that the y is equal to 0. If the y is equal to 0, then what I end up with, I've got 8x minus 11 times 0 equals 11. Now, negative 11 times 0, it just goes away. And then I've got x is equal to 11 over 8, which would be C. Now, again, the way to think of it is some people call this the cover-up method, which is that if you're looking for x, you cover up y, meaning you pretend it's kind of not there, which is why I'm scribbling it out. And then you solve for what's left. What's left over there would be 8x equals 11, which is what I did right there. I solved for 8x equals 11. All right, so let's look at number 10. Now, number 10 is the same idea, but now we're looking for the y-intercept. So we're looking for the y-intercept. So in the last one, we were looking for the x. On this one, we're looking for the y-intercept. So notice what happens here is that if we're talking about the y-intercept, which is up here, take a look at the graph over there on the right, we're talking about where it touches the y. Well, if it's sitting on the y, like it's not to the left of the y, it's not to the right of the y, it's sitting on the y. So what that means, if you haven't gone left or right at all, that means the x at that point would be equal to 0. So if I took the equation 3x minus 4y equals 16, what we're saying is that we're saying that the x value at that point would be equal to 0 because it's sitting on that line. Now, 3 times 0 is just 0. That all goes away, so you end up with negative 4y equals 16. Divide both sides by 4, you get y is equal to negative 4. Now, you're like, okay, I see negative 4 for A, but I also see negative 4 for D. Now, which one is the answer? Well, this says y equals negative 4. Remember, the x comes first, then the y. So if we're saying that the y is equal to negative 4, then the answer there would have to be D. Also, another way to think of that is that we just said, if we're looking for the y-axis, that at that point, that the x is equal to 0. Okay, well, there's your 0 for the x. So the cover-up method on this one is that if you're looking for the y, that means you don't care about the x. So I can almost scribble out the x, and I solve for the equation that's left there, which would be negative 4y equals 16, which is what I did right there, right? So it's actually okay. You could skip this top part that I did right here, plug it into 0. If you know that it's equal to 0, then it's not going to be there, then you can kind of just skip straight to that point. All right, so pause here, try number 10 in the middle. Okay, so let's see what you should have got for number 10 in the middle. For number 10 in the middle, you should have got D. If you did get D, then go ahead and move on to 10 on the right side. If you didn't get that, then let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So the equation they give you is 4x minus 2y equals 8. And what they're asking for is they're asking for what the y-axis, what the y-intercept would be. So what we're looking for is we're saying at the y-intercept, which again is this point right here, what would that value be? Well, as we said, that the x value at that point would be equal to 0. So if the x is equal to 0, then what we have is 4 times 0 minus 2y equals 8. So you get negative 2y equals 8, which y equals negative 4. So if y equals negative 4, again, the x comes first, so x then y. So that's where we get, right, so our x, y, right, so that's where we get D. Again, the idea of the cover-up, if you're looking for y, then just cover up the x, pretend it's not there, and then what's left over would be negative 2y equals 8, which is the equation that I put right there. All right, so pause now and try number 10 on the right side. All right, well, this is it. Last problem. I know you're sad. I know you want it to keep going. You're like, could there please be a problem 11, maybe 12, maybe 13? Sadly, this is where we leave off. This would be our last problem. So number 10 says the answer you should have got D. So 0, negative 6 is what you should have got. If you looking for that, cover up the x. What's left over is negative 2y equals 12. Solve for y. You get y is equal to negative 6, which would be D. Well, I really appreciate you hanging in there. Really appreciate you sticking through this. Really appreciate you showing up for tutoring. I put in a lot of work into creating these videos, so hopefully that they're helpful for you. And all that we ask in return is that you put in a little effort to redo your test so we can help you raise your grade. And in the end, that's all we're looking for. So, way to bring it. Good work. And we'll see you next time.